good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Awaken to Purpose podcast. I have an incredible guest with me here today, Mariah Street. She is the CEO and founder of Legacy Street Law, where she helps people build, protect, and transfer legacy via legal strategy. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yes, thank you guys. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor, per usual. You know, I love you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's my honor to even have you because I think that you have such an incredible story that so many of us need to hear, especially Black women. And not to exclude anybody else, but I think this idea of legacy building, which is something that you do, something that you take seriously, something that is your purpose and your passion. So I really want you to share that out because I think really as Black people, we don't always think about legacy building. And so I'm just going to turn the mic over to you so you can share your incredible story.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you again for having me. Again, my name is Mariah Street. I am the CEO and managing attorney of Legacy Street Law, which is a law firm. It is headquartered in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, but I serve clients in the state as well as across the country. And we focus our efforts on legacy and estate planning as well as business planning. So all of the legal business stuff for your business, if you are an entrepreneur, getting, your entity formed, your contracts in place, your IP, that type of thing. And I love serving legacy minded people in both of those arenas. So people who are very resolved in that I am building something that is lasting, not just during my life, but beyond. I'm building something that is bigger than me, and people who are just very resolved in that mission, and will do whatever it takes to build it and protect it. So I tell people, I'm not for everybody. I'm not necessarily the person if you're like a side hustler or whatever the case is, but I'm really here to help people build lasting things, a lasting legacy. And so I'm definitely very passionate about that, whether it's within your family or your business. And I'm also a speaker. I've spoken, I've done quite a bit of conferences and colleges and all of that, all about legacy building and protection and all of that good stuff. And also a consultant, a writer, a child of God, first and foremost, most importantly for me, and all of that. So I started my firm for personal reasons. So but when I was in college, I was a junior in college at the time, my mom unexpectedly passed away. She was 46 years old. So extremely young. And she was not sick. It was not expected at all. It was 1 minute she was here, the next minute she wasn't. And so, of course, kind of like how you're talking about earlier, a lot of us don't think about, okay, well, what is going to happen to the people that I love that is left behind when I can't take care of them anymore? What's going to happen? And so, unfortunately, when we're not intentional about those types of decisions, then other people get to narrate what happens to our legacy. They get to write the story. So in the legal world, when we're talking about, that type of planning, getting those types of things in place, that person that is determining your legacy is the government. And I don't think a lot of us want, the government to be determining what happens to not just our things and things that we own, but also just the people in our circles, our family, whoever is dependent on us or whatever the case is. And if you're a business owner, what happens to your business, especially if it's something that you really believed in, you were trying to build something that is lasting and all of that. But when we don't have the proper, we don't have the proper conversations, we don't have the proper things in place, and unfortunately, other people, the government in this case, will get to determine what happens to that. And so with my mom, of course, she, like most of us, thought that we probably are going to live forever. I hear this all the time in consultations, like, I'm going to get to this when insert circumstance here, when I get more money, when I obtain more assets, when I form my business properly with this. When I like insert whatever the case is here, and it's just like, I'll get to it at some point. Well, some point might never come. Like, we are not promised tomorrow. Like, it's just the reality. And I'm not trying to be any type of way, but that's just facts. I mean, if anybody here knows when they're going to die, please tell me, because you're going to be rich if you know that information. Okay.
So how old were you when your mom passed away?
I was a month away from turning 21.
Okay. Okay.
I was 20, but my birthday was the following month.
And did you go to law school directly after you graduated from college? Is that is that the reason why you went to law school?
So no, actually, I had wanted to be a lawyer for a really long time. Actually, my mom knew that I wanted to be an attorney. So it was one of my goals in life to do so. I just have a big passion for being an advocate for people who might not have the right voice or whatever the case is. That's always been a passion of mine. It doesn't matter what type of like situation or whatever that I'm in. That's just something I've always wanted to do. And I came across law very young. I did have a family member who is an attorney, so I got to kind of see like what that looked like a little bit. And so yeah, I've always wanted to be an attorney, but I would say always, but for a while before my mom passed. But I will say that afterwards, after my mom passed, and I realized that, she didn't have, anything in place, and that presented consequences to me and my brother. So I or my brother, we never saw anything from her estate. We didn't get any money or any, like, no money from her estate. And I know that that wasn't her intent as a parent. I think most parents are like, I want my kids to be taken care of should something happen to me. But unfortunately, because she didn't have that in place, like, we just were out here. Basically, we were out here.
So what does that mean?
My brother was in high school at the time,
Well, what does that mean? So when you say you guys didn't get any money whatsoever from your mom's estate, can you kind of like share what that means? Because, some people are, just bought a house, have had a house, or, so because the economy is so different than what it was when our parents, were younger. And so can you talk to us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah. So everybody has an estate, whether you think you do or not. It's just the accumulation of all the things that you own, right? Your bank accounts, your insurance policies, your retirement accounts, your brokerage accounts, your real estate, if you own it, your tangible things, that has value. Anything that you own that's in your name is in, is in your estate. And so when you pass away, we have to determine what happens to those things, right? Because they're just out here. So, so when I say I didn't get anything, I didn't get any proceeds from anything that I just listed that she owned. And my mom was very, she did very well for herself. She was a college professor at a college. So, and, so she had a significant amount of things and money and accounts and all of that. So none of that went to me or my brother. My brother was in high school at the time. Because that's what my state laws said, because again, she didn't have a plan. So who determines what happens? State laws and the government, they do. So it all went to my dad. And so I think a lot of people think, well, if it goes to somebody that cares about my kids, that my kids are going to see that money, that might not be the case, because, my dad still had, my dad had to go continue to take care of us. You know what I'm saying? So, and I know that wasn't, like I said, it wasn't my mom's intent. Like, if she would have definitely wanted me to, maybe pay off my college, because I was in college, pay off college tuition, save up for money for a down payment on a future house, or, I started this business, she might've wanted me to have some money to start this firm, you know what I'm saying? And so, because she knew I wanted to be an attorney. But, we didn't see anything. So, yeah, and I think it was from that experience that I saw that this is very common, especially for people in our community, like the Black community and just minority communities in general. We don't think of these things of the utmost importance. We don't have a sense of urgency about us, like, oh, okay, I need to get this done, because there are people dependent on me for my income, for, support and whatever the financial support, whatever the case is, and so because of that, I was like, okay, I'm going to start this firm and I'm going to make sure that I provide some education to our communities about its importance, why it's important, and why you need to do it now and not when insert X circumstance, because that when insert X circumstance didn't come from my mom. Okay.
Now, were your parents together when your mom passed away? Okay, and so when everything transferred over to your, to your dad, in some way you guys were, you benefited from it, even though you weren't the recipients of it directly. It was more indirectly.
It was more indirectly, but again, like, I'm trying to say this without getting into too much, but I like, let's take my school, for example. I'll speak for like my tuition and stuff. I still had loans after college. So even though my dad got the money, it's not like my dad did not pay off my student loans for me or anything like that. Like, I still, like, that money is his, it's in his name. And so he got to do whatever he wanted to with that. And of course, yes, or assets or whatever, of course, yes, benefited in some ways, but because there wasn't any intentionality behind anything, like, I still walked out of school with a heck of a lot of student loans, a heck of a lot. It was it's a significant amount. And, and my dad didn't give me any money for down payment for my house. I did it all myself. I started my business with my own money, and all of that. So, yes, in terms of him taking care of me while just generally like providing food and, all of that, yes, that happened. But in terms of like my future, like, that wasn't provided for me.
So what happens when, kind of like in thinking about a single parent who is, not married, and that person has kids, and that person unexpectedly passes away? What happens to, if they don't have a plan in place, what happens to the estate at that particular point?
Yeah. So again, it's going to determine whatever state that person lives in, those laws will determine, and they vary from state to state. So I'm in North Carolina. My state laws are different than what they are for Maryland or California or Minnesota or Texas. So it really is dependent upon that. Like, that is going to determine who gets what. And even with your kids, if you have kids, then a judge will be deciding. You have to go before the court, and a judge will be deciding who gets to take care of the kids.
So how did, the passing of your mom, the not really being the direct beneficiary of, her estate, how did that propel you forward in what you are doing today?
Yeah. So, again, like, because I saw how much havoc it kind of wreaked on my own family of not having the planning in place, that was my fuel. And so, again, I just kind of wanted to be a resource to folks, to share my story, but also, like, I think a lot of people see my story in them, because my mom was young, like, she wasn't old. So whenever I'm talking to people, I have clients that come in my door and they're older than my mom. And so when I tell them that my mom was 46, they're like, wow, like, I'm older than her. And it's like a reality check. Like, oh, I've even had people to say, oh, I'm literally her age. And that's kind of scary. And I'm like, yeah. And so yeah, that was definitely my motivator. And I want people to, beyond that, even just beyond the legal stuff, I want people to be intentional about the decisions they make, because the decisions that we make, they don't just affect us, they affect the people around you. And especially if you care about those people, then, it's important to consider how things are going to go if I can't take care of it, if I can't take care of it. And it goes to, I tell people too, it goes to being a leader and a good steward of your own family, of your own family. If you have a business, it's being a leader and a good steward over your business, making sure that your clients and customers are taken care of. If you work with people, you know, that's very important. You want to, you know, the byproduct of being a leader in that aspect means that you are responsible and you're accountable to those people. You know what I'm saying? So it's just important to consider those things. But yeah, I love, from that experience, just I love all things legacy, just trying to make sure that we are doing that in the right way, and just in the way that we want. You know, we all have different goals in life, and we have different hopes and dreams for our family and our friends and our business and all of that, and just making sure that those things are carried out in the way that we have designed them to be, how God told us to run it, you know, or all that. So.
Yeah, so it makes me think about something that Rick Warren talks about in his book, Purpose Driven Life. And he talks about the way in which we're shaped, the way in which God has made us. And a lot of that is about life experiences. So going beyond, you know, your natural gifts, your spiritual gifts, but the things that have happened in your life kind of like shape the person that you are. And so how did the passing of your mom really define you, or even your brother, in terms of like where you are today? Because I know you already said you already had an interest and a passion for, you know, going to law school, but who would have known that you would have been practicing this type of law that you are practicing? And so how has that, you know, that unexpected, because sometimes I think there's a difference, of course, between when you're prepared for something as best you can because someone is ill and they've been ill for a while, versus that all of a sudden, how has that really shaped you, or maybe even your brother today?
I feel like that's kind of a deep question. I don't know about my brother. I don't want to speak for him because that's, you know, that's his thing. But but in terms of me, so I think that I feel like it's a deep question and I need to think about it.
It's okay.
But so I've been in therapy for a while now, a couple of years. I believe in Jesus and therapy.
Amen.
And do. So you'll get that over here with me. But I remember going to my therapist and kind of talking about this. I think it kind of honestly made me like very driven, but maybe a little too driven. Like I want to make things happen, you know, because of my mom's passing. And sometimes that requires me, or not requires me, I don't know what the word is. I feel like I'm all over the place. Lord have mercy.
It's okay. No, actually you're not. Because like, so in one way, so you talk about being kind of like perhaps an overachiever.
Yes. That was like, what's the word? Yes, an overachiever. Yes, exactly. An overachiever. And so, but sometimes to the detriment of myself, like I'm very, very rarely do I like, I've been getting a lot better at this actually, but just being intentional about self-care and taking care of myself, setting boundaries, you know, those types of things. And, you know, like I said before, like, yes, it motivated me to, you know, to kind of start the firm and all of that, but also like on a personal level, like it did kind of cause me to become an overachiever, develop those things, develop kind of perfectionist like mentality, which I'm also trying to work through, like, you know, all of that. But yeah. So yeah.
And how about in the context of relationships? Because having your mom pass away so early on for you. And I know there's been people whose parents have passed on even earlier than that. And so, kind of like being an overachiever. This is what I say to people sometimes, because I have one of the things about me is that I'm nitpicky, right? I always say I will nitpick the hell out of the nitpick. And that might work well in a work context where I have to pay attention to details. For you, being an issue. Yeah.
I have to do that. I definitely have to do that.
Right.
Yeah,
sure. Identify what gaps are missing and things of that nature. That works really well. But that same thing that I have does not always work well in the context of family and in relationships. Right. It is, you have to let some things go. You can't always say something just because you see it or you want to. And you're always trying to fix and repair something that doesn't need to be repaired at that particular point in time because you're striving for perfectionism. And I know that's something that happens with me. And so how has that impacted you relationally?
Probably in the same way, honestly. in the exact same way, to be hot about it. To be honest, just.
We got the honest, open, and transparent.
Exactly. Honest, open, and honest, open, for the folks at home. But yes, definitely in the same way. I've been trying to work on that because, like I said, with me having some, perfectionist tendencies, I've had to work on giving myself grace. And to the point of relationships, I mean, number one, the most important relationship is the ones you have with yourself. Because what does the Bible say? Love others as you love who? Yourself. So the first relationship you need to make sure is solid is the one with you and you. Well, first is you and God, but then look at you and you. Like, as
I was thinking that, but I was like, I understand.
Y'all get it. I mean, it's a given that I'm talking about God first. We know that, but next, God, you and yourself. So, because of the tendencies that I will have to to nitpick things about myself and the things that I'm doing, or just, being hard on myself because I'm trying to achieve something, if I can't extend myself grace, I can't extend that same grace to other people. And that I know that has affected sometimes some of my relationships, where I, because I've always been the friend to want to help, I'm the one that's giving advice and sometimes I've had to really pull back and be like, okay, number one, did this person ask for advice?
Hello.
They asked for advice, but then two, just delivering it in a way that is seasoned with love and grace, and be like, hey, I get it. It's in some situations I might have been there where you were, and whatever, and just be there for that person in the way that they want me to be there for them. And so that's definitely something that I have for sure been working on.
That's beautiful. So what was standing out in my mind, kind of as you were speaking, the one is absolutely extending grace to yourself. I think we're so inundated with all the visuals that we have right now. So with social media, things that we see on TV. I mean, so to the point where we are making all of these different type of physical modifications to ourselves because we, in some way, we want to look like somebody else, or we just don't like the way in which God designed maybe our eyes, our nose, our lips, whatever it is, right? And so what that looks like is that you start beating up yourself, so to speak. You start feeling bad about yourself when there's absolutely nothing you should feel bad about. And I know I had to go through that myself. The other thing that you said that stood out, because it's happened to me, my mom had to tell me, Vernell, not everybody wants to hear your opinion. Hello. And so, something, I'm like, well, I really think this. And so I've had to really temper myself and wait for somebody to extend an invitation for me to even share what my thoughts are, because people don't always ask. Now I've learned not to share, because my best friend told me that I have a spirit of correction. And I'm like, listen, I can't help the way that God has shaped me and how he's wired me. And so what that might look like is not everybody wants you to tell, they want to mispronounce words. So they're okay mispronouncing words. They just don't want you to correct them. And so sometimes I'm listening to people and I'm like, Lord, they have mispronounced that word so many times that I believe that they really believe that that is the pronunciation of the word. And so, but I've had to check myself, because I had even a friend tell me like, listen, don't correct me like that. I don't like it. And so I was like, okay, so I never correct that person, even to this day, even though that person might mispronounce, so many words.
Right.
And so I do think it is important to, when you are that overachiever, and I don't know if I see myself as being an overachiever. However, perfectionist, absolutely, because that's where the nitpicking comes in. It just has to be perfect. And I've had to accept my imperfections because God did not make me perfect. And so therefore, you can accept a typo when you post something and kind of laugh it off. Before, I would have just snatched it down like, oh my God.
Me too. Oh my
God. And so, and it is the beauty of what God does is that he gives us the ability to look back over the course of our life. The Holy Spirit shows us ourselves in the word of God as we are reading his word and even listening to his word. That helps us to temper things about ourselves without changing the essence of who we are. God just wants to arrest some of those things sometimes and not have you completely let it go, because he designed you for who you are. But I do think that there's some things, some situations, some life experiences that will amplify these things that we already have. Like you already were a high achiever and very motivated and very driven. And so maybe the passing of your mom just amplified those things. And so God wants to help us bring those things under control in some way. Don't get rid of them, just to kind of like help to temper them. So I hear that, and I love you even saying that. So absolutely extending grace to yourself. And what would you say to someone else who might be experience something very similar to what you've gone through and have certain tendencies and idiosyncrasies and proclivities? What would you say to that person?
I would probably say, I'm speaking specifically to anybody who has those perfectionist like that type of mentality, and no matter what you've been through and you developed it, maybe, because I feel like a lot for me, it also was kind of a trauma response to some things that happened during my childhood. And so won't get into all of that, but just there are certain situations that you might have had that have caused you to, need to be, achieve, or maybe that was the way that you got validation, that you were only validated because you achieved, you were only validated because of the things that you did, or, whatever the case is. For that person, I would say, to move through, two things. I would say to move through life at the pace of grace. And when I say that, it's like knowing what God wants you to do in each season, and moving at that pace, moving when he says to move, chilling when he says to chill, fall back when he says to fall back, do it, really being in tune with that, and just moving. And if he tells you to speed up, then speed up, but really listening to what he has to say, and doing and being obedient in those things, and find some joy in that you are in his will, and all of that. Also, I would say too, you kind of hinted at it, but fall in love with your imperfections. Fall in love with your imperfections, because like you said, none of us are perfect. And even if you have these tendencies of being perfectionists, I know, I'll speak for myself, sometimes you think that you doing everything right, and sometimes you're not. So a lot of times you might not be, okay?
No, I feel that.
Falling in love with that, and knowing that whatever quote quote weaknesses that you have, that is where God steps in. Like if you didn't have the weaknesses, if you didn't have areas where you needed something else besides yourself to make something happen, that is where God shows himself strong, is in your weaknesses. So you can rest in his strength and in what he has for you, and all of that, and that he's going to provide in what he can, what only he can do. And of course, you do your part, but there are quite a lot of, like, he controls the outcome. So, and the results. So, just resting in that for sure.
Yeah, I love everything that you said. I think the other part of it too was just, I love just that idea of falling in love with your imperfections.
Yeah.
Is that I think people also think, when you think about the body of Christ, sometimes we think about what culture is saying today, which is me, it's all about me. And then you can't even afford to have areas of weakness. And that's why we have what's called the body of Christ, because where you are weak, you have other people who are stronger. God will send them in your path to kind of like complement where you are, to help to move you, build you up. Right. In addition, you have the ministering angels and things of that nature. But I just love that you said that, because I think it's so important that we pause, because if we think about it, we've all had some type of trauma in our lives. And because of that, that starts to, it does shape us. Right. And so we want to make sure that we go to God when we have these different situations that have occurred in our life. Like, Lord, can you show me, how can I help other people? Like, even in my brokenness, even in my grief, even in my sadness, even in my disappointment, even in my depression, Lord, how can I really bless somebody else? Because God can still use you even in the midst of your brokenness. So I love that. I love that, Mariah, everything that you just shared. Listen, if people want to connect with you, how can they do that? Like, how can they reach out to you if you need your intellectual property and everything protected, like in your business? If you want to talk about estate planning, how can they reach you?
Yes, definitely. For all of those things, you guys can find my firm at legacystreetlaw.com. All the information that you would need is there, so you can vet me. Please vet me. I'm here for it. Like, I want you to vet me. Look at the testimonials, download the things, like, you can vet me. I'm not scared of that. Like, and I want to make sure that I'm the right person to be helping you. So do that. Go on my site and you can schedule a consultation there. I will say, for estate planning, as well as like business formation stuff, if you want me to draft a contract, custom contracts for you, you do have to be in North Carolina. But as far as intellectual property stuff, you can be anywhere in the United States. I can help you if you live anywhere in the US. So, but for those consultations, you just go to legacystreetlaw.com. You can follow my firm on IG at legacystreetlaw.com, as well as Facebook, Legacy Street Law, or Legacy Street Law, not legacystreetlaw.com. But, and then if you want to follow me personally, my personal page is, for Instagram, is Mariah Advises, ADVISES. So yeah.
And I'll make sure I put all of that in the show notes. And when you say intellectual property, are you talking about trademarking? Can you be more specific? Because not everybody knows what IP or intellectual property.
Yes. Trademarks and copyrights, and all of that. And if you guys go on my site, I actually there's a section, you go under business legal services, there's intellectual property there. It'll tell you everything that we do there. So in terms of
Yeah, and I highly recommend it. If you are solopreneur, entrepreneur, I think one of the things that we are so quick to do is to just step out there and do without giving thoughts of how should I be protecting the business that I'm starting once you kind of like step out on the scene. So I will make sure that I put all that information. And it was such a privilege to have you here today. And thank you for educating all of us with your different legal terms.
Hey, yes.
And sharing your incredible story. I love it. And thank you so much for being a guest today.
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate it.